Investigative journalist Tony Gossing joins us now from Bristol. Mr. Gossing, welcome to the program. Walk us through the recent comments made by UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres.
Well, I think he's starting to articulate what people who are observing this around the world have been saying for years. In fact, some of the commentators have been pointing this out right from the start. Actually, he's right as well to direct his comments to the Saudis and the Emirates, because these are the people who literally, with the click of a finger, could stop this slaughter. And it really isn't a war, because it's a very one-sided conflict. Mostly attacks from the air, which cannot be resisted. And of course, you can't surrender to a bomb falling from a plane. And many civilians have been killed. Of course, around about 13,000 people now dead as a result of this. Effectively, a kind of civil war, really, because this is the old Arabian Peninsula that Britain divided off back in the Sykes-Picot Agreement just after the First World War, divided Yemen from what's now Saudi Arabia. But we've been seeing some massive changes in the region. Let's just take a step back from the conflict for a second. And this is, I think, why the UN are saying something now. We've seen the end of, effectively, of ISIS in Syria, even though there are still quite a few US troops in there. And various countries have been saying, right, it's time now for the Americans to explain what they're doing there and to get out, because they've got no mandate from the UN or from Congress to be there. Then we've seen last weekend the death of President Saleh, who's representing potentially one of the only ways out of this conflict. And I think he's been misrepresented since his death as saying he was going to switch sides to the Saudis. He never said that at all. He was talking about maybe we should have some peace talks. And that was then of course, when he's dead, he can't defend himself. He can't say, no, I didn't say that. And so if you look around the world press, you see some of the people are misrepresenting Saleh, what he was actually saying. Then we've seen also the Saudi-Israel alliance building up, and world opinion actually starting to look at Yemen more closely and say, well, this is not a good conflict. I think the reason for all of these changes is actually a bigger thing, which is the Russian victory in Syria, effectively. And so there are big geostrategic moves to reposition the West's influence in the region, because basically their attempt to overthrow Assad has failed.
Mr. Gossing, I think the million-dollar question in this point is that if the United Nations Secretary General believes that this is a quote-unquote stupid war, why can't the United Nations stop it then?
Well, it's because the way the UN is organized, it favors the powerful, favors the big superpowers. Even if the UN General Assembly, which includes all of the different nations, was to vote to end this war tomorrow, nothing would happen, because any kind of resolution at the Security Council would be vetoed by the United States. They've been doing this in the region, around the Middle East, for decades, haven't they? Every time there is a sensible resolution passed by the United Nations General Assembly or by the Secretary General, statements made by him or her, whoever it happens to be. Actually, it's not been a woman so far, but you know, the Security Council has all the trumps. And one of these days, someone will realise that we need to have the military doing what the political leaders at the General Assembly tell them to. But the superpowers don't want to accept this. And until that happens, I think the UN is largely going to be a talking shop, a very important talking shop, and lots of important treaties signed up to at the UN. But you'll find very often the superpowers, particularly the United States, just ignore those treaties.
Thank you very much, sir. Investigative journalist Tony Gossing joining us from Bristol.